What's up, everybody? We're back. Um, I'm solo tonight. That's not how this is gonna go. I know we've been quite dormant for a while. A lot of life changes been going on with a lot of people on the pod. Um, I'll speak for myself. I've had two career switches since we've last left this podcast. And since you've last seen me live for the Super Bowl stream, I think I might have been on a college basketball one since then. But yeah, it's been a while. It's really good to be back. I don't know. I'm just excited. It's a wonderful time of year. You know, we're in August. We're headed towards playoff baseball. We're headed towards college football. We're headed towards NFL. Headed towards all that good stuff. I'm not gonna hit much NFL stuff today, and there's the elephant in the room of the NBA trade that has happened since we've last went live, but I'd be remiss if I didn't save that for when Will is on this podcast. And it's overall not fair for me to talk about that trade until we get co-host Will on here. I'm going to talk about some other stuff tonight. I'll talk about some Seahawks stuff. I'll talk about some Brewers stuff. I'll talk about some Badger fall camp stuff. The state of the program, as that was a big topic in our group chat tonight or today. So, I'm going to talk about some less, I guess, interesting stuff tonight. And I would look forward to in the next week or two our over under pod that we did last year that I won. Shout out me. But I want everyone here for that. The Giannis trade to Miami. I want Will on for that at bare minimum. So we're going to touch all that stuff. It's just been a hectic last 6 months, I guess. And I'm ready to ramp this stuff up again. And so are the fellas. And you'll see more of them. Don't worry. No one wants to listen to my dumb voice talk for 45 minutes. So we'll get everyone else back on the pod. I've been wanting to kind of throw my voice out here on some topics, and I'm just ready to get this thing going again. So let's start with what's prevalent right now. Let's start with the Brewers. So the trade deadline came and went, and the Brewers did what the Brewers do, and that is they didn't make the splash headline, but Dustin May is a quality starter. I don't have a problem with bringing him in and all that stuff. The Tarek Skubal thing is the most interesting thing from the trade deadline. And honestly, as much as I want to blame Mark Antanasio, and any of you that follow this podcast know, I hate that guy's guts. I think he should sell the team. That's not what we're here to talk about. The Brewers actually made probably a better offer than the Dodgers did. There's been multiple reports coming out since the deadline about what was offered and all this and all that. Brewers didn't want to put Logan Henderson in there, and I don't blame them for that. I can deal with that. I can understand why you don't want to do that. but they offered everyone basically but Jesus Mate, Logan Henderson, Luis Yara, and Cooper Pratt. And our farm system is better than the Dodgers system. And I can't believe I don't remember the dude's name that the Dodgers ended up, the Dodgers package ended up being around him. He's like the 25th best prospect in baseball. And Pena is ranked above him. And the Dodgers package was like him and like a 28-year-old dude still in AAA. Everything that I've seen that has come out since the Skubal trade is that basically the Tigers had no interest in dealing with the Brewers or, for that matter, anyone else not named the Dodgers. The Tigers decided they were going to do Tarik Skubal a solid by trading him to where he was going to eventually sign. I apologize. My mic fell. And it sucks. It really does. But I think for the first time in a long time, I can sit here and say that the Brewers front office was not the problem. Like, I think they made genuine efforts for that trade. And I just think the Tigers weren't going to negotiate with anyone not named the Los Angeles Dodgers. Zaire Hope is the name of that prospect. Just came back to me. But it is what it is. The MLB is what it's going to be. Dodgers are going to have an insanely high salary cap that no one else is going to compete with. Or, okay, I guess the Mets and the Yankees can compete with. And the rest of the MLB is going to have to find a different way. And the Brewers have done, listen, the Brewers since 2017, 2018 have been a playoff team every year. And if you talk to, for instance, my dad, he'll tell me that I'm a greedy Brewers fan because the NLCS should not be. The NLCS should be like us getting there should be just like accept it and be happy. And I just think the way sports are going these days, I have a little more if you're going to make the NLCS every couple of years. And you're going to make the DS almost every year because you're a 1 seed. You would want your team to, at some point, take a swing. And to the Brewers front office's credit, I truthfully do think they took a swing this year. I just think the asking price was different for the Brewers and anyone not named the Dodgers. I think they were always going to trade him to the Dodgers. My weird comparison is the Luka trade. It's kind of different because, Skubal was on his way out. The Mavs didn't have to trade Luka, but the Mavs basically only engaged one team. And that was the Lakers. They basically didn't let the rest of the NBA know that Luka was available. And while it's a little bit different because I think the rest of the MLB did know that Skubal was available, there was only one real team that the Tigers were interested in working with, and it was the Dodgers. And, that brings up the broader point of we're probably looking at a lockout next year. There's got to be some sort of salary cap in baseball. It's just, and people will argue, well, the Dodgers don't get the 1 seed. Well, the Dodgers play it like Chiefs used to in the NFL, which is we're going to win what we need to get into the playoffs. And then from there on out, we're going to give you our best product. So, it is what it is. I want to blame Attanasio because I hate his guts. But the whole Scooble thing isn't his fault. It is his fault that we don't ever keep anybody that's good. We've got a left side of the infield problem, and Cooper Pratt's been great, but you can't tell me that if we would have paid Willie Adames some money to keep him around, that he couldn't have been a great mentor for Pratt. And then Pratt gets you bring him up and he gets to play every so often. And Adames is a great teacher. Third base is just whatever. Apparently, I know the reports are that Ortiz is hurt. I wanted Ortiz off the team midway through the season, but then he starts playing well, and then Murph decides Hamilton is the guy to play. I just don't know what's up with that. It's just super weird to me. We just lost 3 in a row to the Padres. This Brewers team is what this Brewers team has been for the last 5 years. They got an NLCS ceiling, and that is absolutely it. I hate to say it, but that's what it is. And I think a majority of older Brewers fans are happy with that, but at some point we got to go try and win a World Series. All right, I spent 10 minutes on the Brewers. Let's get off the Brewers. Let's move on to I'm going to move on to the Badgers. This is a topic that anyone on our podcast necessarily wants to talk about because not a lot of them are college football guys. And the ones that are college football guys just refuse to think Fickell can ever do anything. It was a hot topic in our chat today. So I'll get into this year's team a little bit. So what Badger fans need to know from last year to this year is that our quarterback room is extremely competent. Colton Joseph, we paid over $2 million to bring him in from Old Dominion. He had over 1,000 rushing yards last year. He threw the ball decently, and I get that's not at necessarily the Power 4 level, but his versatility gives us something that we haven't had. Now, the big question with Wisconsin is, can our quarterbacks stay healthy? And I can't guarantee that, but what I can guarantee you is that Deuce Adams, transfer from Louisville, and Ryan Hopkins, true freshman quarterback, have tore up camp, whether that was spring practice or the 6 practices we've had this fall so far. I would feel way better about if QB1 went out this year than I would have any other year under Luke Fickell or Paul Chryst or anyone else. Like, I truthfully believe that they have a very strong quarterback room this year. The defense is going to be fine. Like, the defense finished top 15 last year. Mason Posa and Cooper Catalano were true freshman linebackers that started for us down the stretch when we beat ranked Washington and ranked Illinois. Those two are studs. They have good defensive line. They have beef on the defensive line. John Kamara is a transfer from Kansas. He is an absolute freak in terms of measurables and everything else. Tommy Heiberger's been with the program for 3 years now. He's just, he'd probably be starting at most other Division I programs, but Cooper Catalano and Mason Posa are in front of him. He's good. The back end, we brought in a lot of talent. Bryce West from Ohio State, who would have started for them this year. Transfer from Arizona State in the at safety, who's had over 40 starts. And we bring back guys we like as well. I think there's a lot of optimism about this Wisconsin football program this year. And for the first time since Luke Fickell's taken over, the schedule is actually favorable. There's no Alabama in the non-con. We do have Notre Dame to start the year. But what people need to understand is that Notre Dame is a national title contender this year and is more than likely going to be they're a top 5 team coming into that game. So if Wisconsin can hang around and prove themselves defensively and look competent offensively, I mean, that's going to be a tough game to win no matter what. So I'm not necessarily expecting a win in that game, but the rest of the schedule is very doable. I mean, we miss Oregon, we miss Ohio State, we miss Michigan, and we miss Indiana. There's not a reason, and not to mention, I kind of buried the lead here, but we spent $25 million on this roster. It's the most Wisconsin's ever spent on a roster in the NIL era. If they can't go 8-4, Luke Fickell doesn't have a job. Let's put it that way. I mean, the schedule is very doable. Other than that Notre Dame game, to me, honestly, every other game on that schedule, like, I'm not saying we're favorites, but it can be had. USC at home will be tough. At UCLA, at Iowa, those are going to be tough games, but I really believe in this team this year. I really believe they bought into Fickell this year. And to be honest with you, if they haven't, the results don't show, Fickell's getting fired. So, and we'll reset from there. So I choose to believe that they poured money into the program this year, and I think there's a change. An easier schedule, the money they poured in, a competent QB1, and even if he gets hurt, I don't feel like the rails fall off with QB2 or QB3. So I'm very confident in this football team. The last thing I want to bring up before I move on from them is Eugene Hilton Jr. That's T.Y. Hilton's kid, for those of you who watched the NFL. I listened to the Wisconsin Beat Writers podcast. It's called The Camp. If you guys are Wisconsin football fans and you want to hear about what's going on in fall camp and how things look leading up to the season, I strongly suggest you go listen. They do a podcast after every fall practice, and they talk about the people who stood out. And Eugene Hilton Jr. has stood out the last 3 practices. Why that's big is because Wisconsin doesn't have a QB1, or I'm sorry, a wide receiver 1. And I think Eugene could be that guy. Their running back room with Abu Sama, transfer from Iowa State, who had 800 yards last year. Brian Jackson, transfer from USC. He's kind of more of a bulky guy, but he's got sneaky speed. And Darian Dupree, who's been on the roster for the last 2 years. It's just, I think our running back room, our quarterback room are deep. I think wide receiver room and offensive line is the question. But the things I've heard so far out of camp are pretty positive, along with the fact that our defense is going to be top 15 in the country again. Again, Mason Posa and Cooper Catalano will be coveted by every top team in the country this year after the season ends. I can guarantee it. I mean, Posa had offers last year from Ohio State after only playing half the season as a true freshman. So our linebacking core is going to be insanely good. The question will be whether the defensive line on the interior is as good as it was last year to help stop the run, which we were top 15 in the country in. But if we can do that again, which it sounds like we have the horses and the depth, the defense is going to be fine. I'm not worried about the defense. It's our offense averaged 12 points a game last year. If our offense can average 25 to 30 points a game this year, Wisconsin, I guarantee, is 9-3 at worst. But no, that's a big if. The last thing I'm going to touch on before I get out of here is I'd be remiss if I don't talk about my Super Bowl champion Seahawks. And they're on Hard Knocks this year. And I hope NFL fans, I know most of you probably don't watch Hard Knocks. Don't blame you. Usually it's whatever. But I kindly invite you to watch the first 2 episodes of Hard Knocks so you can understand what Mike Macdonald has built for a culture for this team and why this team is not going to be bad anytime soon. Everyone's bought in. He holds people to the highest standards. We lost some pieces. We lost Tariq Woolen, which I think to a lot of people is a big loss, but people who watch the Seahawks week in and week out know that Mike Macdonald was never a big Tariq Woolen fan. Kobe Bryant, huge loss. Kobe Bryant was awesome at safety for us, and it's really sad to see him get hurt and probably not be available until the playoffs for the Bears. That really does suck. Kobe Bryant's good dude, hard worker. That was really almost a gut punch for me to see because I was looking forward to him coming back to Seattle and playing the Seahawks when the Bears come to town in like week 13, I think it was. But unfortunately, I'm not going to get to see that. So we lost Woolen, him, Boye Mafe. Boye Mafe was a good edge guy for us. We liked Derek Hall better, so we signed him to a contract instead of Mafe. But Mafe I still think can provide a lot for the Bengals off the edge in a defense that has been complete ass for pretty much the last 2 years. And then Kenneth Walker. It was tough to see K9 go. I think the writing was on the wall because K9 always wanted to be the bell cow, and he was always going to split reps with Zach Charbonnet. And I'm glad he gets his opportunity to go to Kansas City and be the guy. I think if he can stay healthy, I'd argue, a top 5 running back in the league. That healthy thing is a big if with him. But I love that we brought in Jadarian Price, the rookie from Notre Dame. We brought in Emmanuel Wilson from the Packers. And we had George Halani, who a lot of people are going to be like, oh, who the hell's that? Why does that guy matter? He got some reps in the NFC Championship last year and in the Super Bowl. George Halani's been our steady number 3 for a while, and I think he can take a step forward. He's listed as RB1 on our depth chart for the preseason week 1, and Price is 2, but I think you're going to see a steady dose of 3 running backs between Halani, Price, and Wilson. So, do I think Seattle's going to repeat? No. Do I think they're still going to be damn good this year? Absolutely. Our defense is still elite, and the pieces we lost, we have guys in waiting. Kobe Bryant we lost, like I said, but Ty Okada last year played half the season for us when Kobe Bryant was hurt and played very well. Cornerback's a little bit of an issue. We still got Spoon and Josh Jobe, and Nick Eamon can basically play anywhere in our secondary. So I don't worry too much about it because Julian Love is our other safety, a vet, awesome. Our defensive line with Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy II, Riley Mills, who came on in the Super Bowl last year, and then Uchenna Nwosu on the edge, who we had last year. He had the big pick six in the Super Bowl, if you don't want to consider it a fumble. Derek Hall, who caused the first fumble in the Super Bowl. Seattle's got depth, and they brought in I can't remember his name for the life of me right now. Dante Fowler to DeMarcus Lawrence, I haven't even mentioned yet. These guys all played well for us last year outside of Fowler, who didn't play with us last year. So I'm optimistic about Seattle. I'm not insanely optimistic. The Rams are the Rams. I mean, we'll get to this in the over-under pods, but you add Myles Garrett and McDuffie out wide, which corner was part of the Rams' problem last year. And I think it's hard to argue that the Rams aren't the Super Bowl favorites, but you take the NFL for what it is. I mean, we sat on this podcast a year ago, and I said Seattle ceiling was 10-7 and one playoff win. So you just never know what's going to happen. But glad to be back. Glad to be spewing out my wonderful takes again. Next podcast you see from us will have, I confidently can say we'll have 3 or 4 of us. You'll see Sawyer, or Will, or Beekert, and Josh, and might not see me, but I had to get the takes off I had before everything else. Super, like I said, super glad to be back. Can't wait to spit out more content. Thanks for tuning in, guys.